the very first Sherlock Holmes story, A Study in Scarlet.
In the year 1878, I earned my degree as Doctor of Medicine at the University of London and enlisted immediately in the army. Attached as assistant surgeon to the 5th Northumberland Fusiliers, I was shipped off to India. There, as fate would have it, I was caught up in the Second Afghan War. It was at the bloody Battle of Mai Wand that I was wounded, badly. A Jezile bullet struck me in the shoulder, shattering bone and tearing into the subclavian artery. I would surely have died on that scorching plain had it not been for the bravery of my orderly, Murray, who lifted me onto a pack-horse and carried me to safety. Long months in a Peshawar hospital followed. I was weak, emaciated, and when at last I was declared unfit for service, I was shipped back to England with nothing but a modest pension. With no family to receive me and few friends, I drifted into London, that great seething city where a man may live for years and remain as lonely as if he were stranded on some desert island. I had enough money to live modestly, but the city rents soon reminded me that even modest living can be expensive. It was then, while brooding over my dwindling funds and uncertain future, that chance turned the course of my life forever. One morning, while in the Criterion Bar in the Strand, I was startled by someone calling my name. Turning, I recognized young Stamford, who had once been my dresser at St. Bartholomew's Hospital. He greeted me warmly and insisted I join him for lunch. As we walked together, he said cheerfully, "You're looking thin, Watson. Back from Afghanistan, aren't you?" "Indeed," I answered. "Wounded at Mai Wand. I'm on the retired list now." He gave a sympathetic nod. "Sorry to hear it. London must seem a dreary change after the hot sun and battlefields." "It does," I admitted. "And more than dreary, it's ruinous. I need rooms, somewhere decent and affordable, or I'll soon be out of funds." Stamford laughed suddenly. "That's a strange coincidence. You're the second man today who's spoken of wanting someone to share rooms with." "Really? Who's the other?" He hesitated, as though unsure how much to say. "It's a fellow at the hospital lab. You'll think me mad when I tell you. He's eccentric, very eccentric. Keeps to himself, spends days bent over experiments, and talks of strange theories. Yet he's a good fellow at heart. His name is Sherlock Holmes." "Holmes?" I repeated. "What's wrong with him?" "Oh, nothing exactly, but his knowledge is unusual. For instance, he's mad about chemistry. Spends hours mixing things and producing explosions that terrify the staff. Then he has a knack for beating corpses with sticks to study how bruises form, that sort of thing." I laughed, despite myself. "That sounds harmless enough, but eccentricity is hardly a crime. Do you think he'd mind a roommate?" "On the contrary, he's been searching for one. He's worried about finding someone patient enough to tolerate his peculiarities. If you're serious, we can go to the lab right now. He'll be there, I'm sure." My curiosity was piqued. A man of science, absorbed in odd experiments, yet seeking a roommate, that sounded intriguing rather than alarming. I agreed at once, and we turned our steps towards St. Bartholomew's. The laboratory was high-ceilinged, filled with chemical bottles, skulls, test tubes, and other odds and ends of medical study. As we entered, a cry of delight rang out from the far end. "Eureka! I've found it!" The speaker was a tall, lean man with sharp features and eyes that glittered with excitement. His sleeves were rolled up, and he was holding a test tube that fumed with some dark red liquid. "Holmes," said Stamford, I've brought someone who may be willing to share rooms with you. This is Dr. Watson, fresh from Afghanistan." Holmes came forward eagerly, grasping my hand with surprising strength. "How do you do, sir? You've been in Afghanistan, I perceive." I stared at him in astonishment. "How on earth did you know that?" He only smiled mysteriously and turned back to his bench, carefully setting down the test tube. "We'll speak of that later. But this is splendid, Stamford. You've solved both our problems at once. Watson needs rooms, and I need someone to help with rent. If we can manage to not get on each other's nerves, this could work famously." We spent the next half hour in discussion. Holmes described rooms he had found at 221B Baker Street, comfortable, well-aired, with 2 bedrooms and a sitting room. The rent was reasonable, and we could split it. His manner was brisk, practical, and oddly compelling. I found myself agreeing almost before I had time to reflect. At last, Holmes turned to me with that sharp, piercing gaze of his. "Now, Doctor, I warn you fairly. I have my habits, some of which may be displeasing. I keep odd hours. Sometimes I won't speak for days, lost in thought. At other times I may suddenly fire a pistol at the wall to test some theory. I own a violin, which I play at odd hours. I use chemicals that may produce disagreeable smells. If these things offend, say so now." I laughed. "You paint yourself in alarming colors, Mr. Holmes. But I've lived among soldiers, where noise and eccentricity are the order of the day. I think I can put up with you if you can put up with me." Holmes's smile widened. "Then it's settled. We shall begin our life together at once. Come tomorrow, and we'll inspect Baker Street."
The very next day, Holmes and I moved into our rooms at 221B Baker Street. They consisted of 2 comfortable bedrooms, opening into a large, cheerful sitting room which looked out onto the street. The furniture was neither luxurious nor plain, but well chosen for comfort, with deep armchairs, a sturdy sofa, a thick rug, and shelves lined with books and bottles. To me, fresh from the noise and discomfort of barracks and hospitals, the place felt almost like a sanctuary. Holmes seemed perfectly at ease from the first. He unpacked little, for his life appeared to be contained in a few trunks and boxes, many of which held chemical instruments. From that moment, the sitting room took on the character of both a workshop and a living space. Our table was soon littered with test tubes, beakers, small burners, and stains of chemicals, which he handled with the precision of a man who thought in formulas and results rather than in appearances. It did not take me long to see that Holmes was a most extraordinary man. He would spend days absorbed in a single experiment, scarcely speaking, and then suddenly burst out with a fit of energy, playing his violin, laughing, or rushing off without explanation. His moods swung between silent meditation and restless activity, and while they puzzled me, they never ceased to fascinate me. At night, I often heard him draw his bow across the strings, sometimes producing tender melodies that soothed the soul, and other times fierce, wild improvisations that revealed a mind whirling with intensity. Though eccentric in his habits, Holmes was a good companion, polite, patient, and willing to share his experiments if I asked. Yet he remained a mystery. What was his profession? What did he actually do? I could not discover. It became a small study of mine to catalogue his knowledge. In some areas he seemed brilliant, in others entirely ignorant. He knew next to nothing of literature. Shakespeare, Milton, the great poets and novelists, he dismissed them entirely. Philosophy, likewise, meant nothing to him. In astronomy, he was so lacking that one evening, to my astonishment, he confessed he had never cared whether the earth revolved around the sun or the sun around the earth. He said with great seriousness that if such knowledge was of no practical use to him, he would not waste brain space storing it. On politics, he was slightly informed, though not deeply. But in certain fields, his knowledge was exact and remarkable. He was intimately familiar with poisons and alkaloids, yet he cared nothing for plants that had no bearing on such matters. His grasp of geology was startlingly practical. With a glance at a man's trousers, he could declare where he had last walked: clay, chalk, or gravel. Chemistry he knew in depth, almost to the point of obsession, and anatomy he had studied in a way both peculiar and precise, concentrating on details useful to his own ends. Most astonishing of all was his grasp of criminal records and case histories. He seemed to know every strange crime that had ever been committed, the methods of every murderer, thief, or swindler. In short, his knowledge was a patchwork of brilliance and ignorance, stitched together by a single principle. If it was useful to his purpose, he mastered it. If not, he ignored it completely. One evening, I could bear my curiosity no longer. We had been dining together, and I asked him directly, "Holmes, may I ask what your particular line of work is?" He smiled, stretched out in his chair, and said quietly, "I suppose you could call me a consulting detective." I repeated the words in surprise. "A consulting detective? I have never heard of such a profession." "It is a new one," he said lightly. "You see, here in London we have detectives from Scotland Yard, we have private agents, we have police of every rank. When they are at a loss, when they cannot see their way, they come to me. I am the last court of appeal. When Gregson, Lestrade, or Athelney Jones fail, they come here, and I find the thread they have missed." I stared at him, both impressed and skeptical. "But how can you possibly succeed where they fail? You have no force of men, no official authority. They bring you cases only when the trail is cold." Holmes leaned forward with a gleam in his eye. "The trail is never cold, Watson. The little things are always there. A man scratches his finger, ties his tie in a certain fashion, writes a letter with a peculiar flourish. These trifles, as you call them, are what matter. From them I can deduce facts that lead to the truth. The world is full of obvious things which nobody observes." I remember the first time we met, when he had shaken my hand and declared I had come from Afghanistan. "That still puzzles me," I admitted. "How did you know?" He laughed softly. "It was easy. Your skin is tanned, but not evenly. It is the burn of a tropical sun. Your face is drawn, as of one who has suffered illness. Your arm is stiff. You carry it as one wounded. Clearly, you are an army doctor returned from service. Now, where has England had trouble lately? Afghanistan." The conclusion was inevitable. I stuck my head half in wonder, half in disbelief. "You make it sound absurdly simple." "It is absurdly simple," he replied. "But men never think to observe. They look, but they do not see." To prove his point, he picked up the morning newspaper from the table. "Here is a good example. A man has been found dead in Brixton. The police declare it a suicide. Observe. The man was discovered without wound, poison being suspected, and there were no signs of disturbance. But notice the phrase, poison being suspected. Poison always leaves traces, yet none are reported. Further, the man was of robust health. Suicide is unlikely. Therefore, it is murder. The police will stumble to that in a few days. I see it at once." The confidence in his voice was remarkable, as though he was stating a fact of mathematics. That evening, as I sat reflecting on his strange powers, a small card was brought up by our landlady. Holmes glanced at it and smiled with satisfaction. "Ah, it is Gregson of Scotland Yard. He wants me at once. There has been a murder in Brixton Road." He rose, taking his hat and cane. Then he turned to me. "Watson, you have been idle. Would you care to accompany me? You have seen little of the detective's art. Come and study with me the science of deduction."
And so it was, with that sudden invitation, that I found myself about to step into the very heart of an investigation which would prove the beginning of many adventures in the remarkable company of Sherlock Holmes.